sensitivity, your heating, your spirit. Thank you for what we are going to discuss tonight, whatever that is, as far as where we're going from here. We thank you that you're trustworthy and true, and we just pray that you guide us and direct us in our conversation. May it be productive, and just may you just give us creative ways that we can serve and honor you when we meet together tonight. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. All right. Do I actually need this? You probably don't need this for you to hear me, but are you recording this? Is that okay? So I gotta use this.
I don't think it's on though.
It's on. I'm just not eating it. But you know what? Because we're going to do some conversation too tonight, so don't freak out if I hand it to you, because if he's recording it, people may want to hear the question or the thought or whatever.
We do have those boom mics, so
Oh, so we don't need this for that?
it helps, but those
Okay.
should be able to catch questions.
All right. So, I don't know how many weeks ago it was, but we had a meeting, we kind of laid out the vision for where we're going. And a lot of people asked some questions about, so when is this going to happen and what's that going to look like and so forth. And so tonight is kind of more nuts and bolts, less presentation, some conversation. There's some things that as the leadership kind of talked, we kind of wrestled with. Well, is it better this way or that way? Because, again, a lot of this is stuff where we're feeling our way through, and there's times there's something that seems like a good idea, it works out not as well, and so there's a little bit of trial and error involved. I'd like to say it's all Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit leads perfectly. There's no trial and error there, but our hearing of Him, there's sometimes some trial and error involved. But just to kind of start off, I'll kind of walk through some of what we talked about last time, but what we've been going through as we've been going through the Gospel Primer, and before that we went through the Tangible Kingdom Primer, and we've been talking a lot about the idea of being missional as a church, which is kind of redundant, because the idea that there's a church that isn't missional is not biblical at all. There is no such thing. There is if the church ain't missional, it ain't the church. It may be a church, but it ain't the church. So we've been talking about the idea that we're a family of missionary servants, that we're disciples, that are followers of Christ. That's what a disciple is a follower of Christ. We're disciples who make disciples. And a church, really, at its core, is simply a community of disciples. And even it's redundant to say disciples who make disciples, because when you're talking about disciples of Christ, there are no other kind. Right? A disciple is a follower of Christ. When Jesus called his first followers, he said to them what? Follow me. But there was no period there. He said, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Now, I didn't say follow me and be fishers of men. He said, follow me, and I will make you. In other words, if you follow me, I will make you fishers of men. And so that's the kind of part of the Christian life, is this whole idea of, as kind of Caesar likes to say, how we get to live. And part of how we get to live is we get to live in such a way that's full of joy and faith and love and hope and all of those things, that we get to share that with other people so that they get to live in that too. And so we really want to be, what is the vision ultimately for City on a Hill, is to be a community of disciples. A community of disciples who make disciples, even though that's redundant. And so all of what we're doing is kind of aiming that way. And when I say disciples who make disciples too, I want you to hear that I'm not saying disciples who make converts, or disciples who make churchgoers. Sometimes in the church we settle for converts and churchgoers. Notice the difference between a convert and a disciple? A convert simply says, okay, I believe that, now I believe this, or at least cognitively. A disciple lives their life like Jesus lived his life. And we can see where there's been, even if you look at the stats from the Billy Graham Foundation, and all of the thousands upon thousands of people that were converted at Billy Graham Crusade, when they've followed up on those people, it's a very low percentage of people that are truly still walking with Christ, because they haven't necessarily been discipled properly. And so that's what I want to hear, that we could, again, be an additional kind of church, and a programmatic church that is all about filling seats, and we would look very successful. But I'd rather have 3 rows of devoted disciples who are multiplying than 100 rows of churchgoers. I don't know if that's how you feel. I kind of think it probably is how you feel, because they're still here. I'm just going to be honest. So that's kind of where we at. We kind of outlined 4 main components of where we're going. We talked about Table of Grace. You're familiar with that. It's the Table of Grace worship gathering we have Saturday nights right now. We talked about Celebration of Grace. It would be a time without teaching necessarily, a very, very minimal teaching, but it's more going to be focused on worship, prayer, celebrating what God's been doing among us, and praying about what God's going to do among us. And we're talking about doing that kind of thing once a month. I'm going to go back to all this and talk about what's the next steps in each of those. The third thing is the missional communities. I haven't settled on a name for them. I know Scott mentioned that some of these terms are just changing, but really missional communities are different than life groups. And I have a great video that I'm probably going to post. It's a YouTube video. I'll post the link on our Facebook page, or I'll embed it in maybe the next church-wide newsletter that goes out. How many people get those newsletters? Anyone not get the newsletter? You don't get it, but your email doesn't work really, so you tell her what's in there, right?
She does. She
Okay.
usually brings her phone.
So does everyone open the newsletter every time? Don't lie now, because we get the numbers. Cindy and I know exactly how many people open them. But I just wanted to know if that's a good means of communication, or if we're assuming that everyone sees, reads, and absorbs that information, or whether it's not. So it looks, as I'm looking around here, among this group, it looks like it's a good means of communication. So anyway, I will kind of send out a great video by a guy named Jeff Vanderstelt, who planted Soma churches, and now he's in another, well, there's like a group of churches under the moniker Soma, as this church is multiplied. And actually, this Soma church is the church, the other guy that helped Jeff Vanderstelt plant that church was Caesar Kalinowski, who's been coaching Karen and I. And I think I said this last time, I did want to let people know. I think sometimes people may wonder, wow, all these changes started happening when Tom started getting coached by that Caesar Kalinowski guy, and I don't want you to be mad at him. Honestly, it's the other way around. God had really put a lot of where we're going on my heart, and I thought, I don't have enough experience to navigate a lot of this on my own, so I'm going to go out and find someone who can coach me in it, who's ahead of me. So it's as if I decided I want to play basketball, let me go out and find the best basketball coach I can and get him working with me. So that's kind of where that came from. And he has definitely influenced me along the way, but wanted you to know that. So missional communities is the third thing, and then grow groups is the fourth piece. Kind of the 4 pillars of what we're doing. Is everyone, I don't know who was at my meeting, who's part of what kind of, does anybody need any clarification about what any of those are? Yes?
Well, I'm just thinking you should repeat them again.
Okay, so there's Table of Grace, which is kind of our weekly service. That's our kind of main equipping where teaching is happening kind of venue. Then there's Celebration of Grace, which is a monthly thing that is predominantly worship and prayer, kind of a concert of prayer kind of thing. The third thing is missional communities, which we'll come up with a better name for. We'll come up with a cool name. But missional communities are small groups, but every small group to some degree should have an upward, an inward, and an outward focus. You know, upward is how we connect with God. Inward is connecting with one another in the community. Outward is how are we impacting the world. And what happens in most small groups and most churches, either they have an upward emphasis, which is good. We want to be, and maybe an inward. But a lot of times the outward never happens. But in a group like that, and if outward is an emphasis, upward and inward do happen. Because there's not going to be any outward if there's not upward and inward. Because we need one another and we need God to see that happen. So, but a lot of groups and a lot of churches, we've had upward, we had our little Bible study, and we had coffee together, but there's no kingdom impact. And so with our missional communities, the big emphasis is really, that's where most of the outward impact of our church is going to happen. Through little bands of our people saying we want to impact those folks or those folks in lots of different creative ways. And then the fourth thing is grow groups, which are groups of 2 or 3 that are simply mutually discipling one another. All right? So, grow groups, missional communities, celebration of grace, table grace. Yes?
See, what I was thinking, and I'm not sure, sure this is correct, but I kind of think of the missional groups as being pretty much what the church, a little more church than what we think of as church.
Yeah.
Like to me, in the New Testament, probably the missional group
Yeah.
is a better picture of what maybe Jesus meant to happen in the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah. And I would say that missional community is probably the truest expression of church as a whole. Of those 4 and those other 3 things support that. Whereas in most churches, the worship service is considered the main thing, and everything else supports that. So we have small groups so that people feel relational because our service got so big and they don't feel lost. So we're closing the back door for our small groups and that kind of thing. But the focus is who's in the seats on Sunday morning. Whereas I really would view, as we move forward, table of grace, again, is the place where we come together, get encouraged and equipped and so forth, to then go be the church out there. There's a rhythm of gathering and scattering that the biblical church has always had. It's like if you think of a campfire, a pile of coals, when they're piled together, they heat up, and then you can take a single coal and bring it over here and use it to light something on fire. But if you keep it separated, it cools off. But all you gotta do is put it back in the pile and it heats up again. So that's kind of an image of the church. We come together to heat up, and then we move out to bring the heat elsewhere. Let's bring the heat. Table of Grace, where we stand at this point is it's Saturday nights, 5 to 7, and the plan was at least through the summer to do that. We have had some conversations, and we are realizing that in the summer, Saturday night is, particularly in the summer, Saturday night is rough because so many people are weekends. We've had some conversations. I know Karen and I and the elders and I talked some with some other folks, and I love input from you folks right now, but just the idea too of, initially we looked at Sunday nights, and kind of a commuter culture people said, oh, that would never work Sunday night. So we moved it to Saturday night, and they didn't come anyway. Even the ones from our church already. And I think partially that's the summer. But we did kind of bang around the idea of what it would look like if we went like 4 to 6 on Sunday. Then our commuter culture people still have their Sunday evening. Just an idea. At some point we will settle down. This won't just keep changing throughout the history of the church. But I'd love feedback on that, any thoughts on that. Again, just literally an idea. I think probably, unless just everyone's not coming, you know, it's 10 of us every week, that for the summer, we ought to stay where we're at, but we ought to consider, yeah. That looked like you flicked your hand. Someone flicked their hand. There's a hand flick.
At least during the summer, with the longer days and vacations, putting it earlier means you have to cut your afternoon activities
Mhm.
earlier in order to get here.
Right. So,
So,
so there's no perfect time slot. No matter
yeah,
what.
there is no, but for the summer, I think what you were saying, maybe leaving it where it is, at
Yeah.
least for the summer,
Yeah,
is probably a good
Yeah,
Okay.
idea.
I think her saying that is, it takes 21 days to build a habit, and you find people to get in the habit of Saturday night. And so trying to switch it around, and you keep switching around, you're stand the risk of losing more people.
yeah, yeah.
And people, if you want to come, like, oh, I'm supposed to come on Saturday night, and then they show up Saturday night, and
Yeah.
nobody's here, so.
Or we've already started.
Oh, no, I hear you. And we have added people who do come because of Saturday,
Yeah,
that like Saturday.
so then,
Um,
I
They're
just
starting
think
to,
you're kind of keeping
show.
it where it is, don't let the Holy Spirit decide who comes and stays.
Right.
Who goes.
again, not suggesting that we do a change. I'm just looking for broader feedback, because otherwise it's the other, you know, three of us looking at each other, like, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? You know, so it's good to have that feedback from a broader group of people. And again, I understand that sometimes an idea comes forth in a meeting and nothing, you know, you don't have anything to think. But then you're driving home and you go, no, now that I think about it. So don't feel like you missed the opportunity. Please pick up the phone, text, email, whatever, myself or any of the leadership folks, and give us that feedback at any point. So anyway, so, yes.
Well, I was just gonna ask, like, what were the main concerns about doing on Saturday night, that people were saying?
The only main concern about Saturday night is just, and again, particularly during the summer, is that, you know, a lot of people take off for the weekend or whatever, they decide they're gonna do something Saturday, and so they're just knocking back.
My concern is so many, like, life events happen on Saturday, weddings, you know, showers, birthday parties, it just, yeah, there are plays, kids, you know, your daughter's in a play, like, there's just a lot on Saturday evening that it's hard for people to be regular. Like, even people that wanna be regular, it's hard, just because of life event type things. I mean, that's just something to think about.
Laura?
I just can't get off on Saturday night. I work at Walmart and they absolutely need people on nighttime shifts. And there's just no way in heck I'm getting off on Saturday nights, or even Sunday nights for that matter. So I just don't see in the near future at all that I'm getting off to come to a nighttime service. You know,
But we can't pray about that. Because there was this guy called Nehemiah, and he felt like God was telling him to go build a wall. And he thought, the king will never give me off work. Then he prayed about it, and lo and behold, the king gave him off work.
I signed a 6-month thing saying I could work,
Oh, okay.
so
Yeah.
I can't change it.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, you know, we can always be praying and, you know, you never know. Someday the boss might come to you and go, you know what, I can't get anyone to work Sundays. Everyone wants to go to church. Do you work Sunday mornings? And I'll give you every Saturday night off. Who knows? It could happen. I'm just saying. It could.
And missional communities are gonna be central to the
Yeah.
church, so
Yeah,
those will be a week.
Yeah.
That might help with the Saturday night thing too. As our missional communities grow and we get more people involved in a regular, like Saturday night thing, then we might not have as many of those events. It's still, I mean, other people can go to other churches, they're gonna have stuff on Saturday nights, but at least with the
Right.
in our immediate group, it might be a little bit.
yeah. When it's working really missionally and multiplication wise as opposed to addition, the missional communities become the big end of the funnel, not the service. So it's not a service that attracts and then feeds people to small groups. small groups that are growing, multiplying, that feed people the other direction.
One of my questions with it was, as, you know, if the missional communities really take off and as they grow, at some point, like, is there gonna be a need for Table of Grace? Or do we just do Celebration of Grace and let the missional communities be their own thing? That was one thought I had, like, if these really take off, and we're functioning as a missional community, kind of as a church, you know, we're being a body together, then we could like do the once a month celebration, and you almost wouldn't need
Yeah,
Grace, but I don't know.
there are churches based on missional communities that, I think they mostly all have something besides missional community on a weekly basis, but like Soma, for instance, they'll do like, all right, say there's 4 weeks in a year, so say one Sunday morning, they'll be like, all right, we're all gonna go out and do service in the city. And so they'll do different things in that time slot, but they do have that weekly time slot.
There's something-
And the other thing I'd say about that is, when you look at the house church movement, where it's all, you know, these groups, and they don't have that central thing, the typical house church lasts 3 years. That's the life cycle. But when they are part of a house church network, and there's some other thing tying them together, equipping them, and keeping them from becoming crazy cults and all that kind of thing, they tend to last longer.
Sharon has something, she keeps raising.
Yes.
Well, you know, I know, at least I think, one of the reasons why, you know, we moved to Saturday was to kind of break in our mind, the tradition of what the church looks like.
Right.
You know, that was one of the
Yeah.
reasons
Yeah.
for that, and I totally get that, I think that was good. But so now, like, what would, I mean, you know, if, you know, we're moving in this, then what would, you know, going to, you know, moving it to Sunday morning and doing like a brunch type thing and have it Sunday morning?
Yeah, well, logistically, that can't happen yet. Like, even if we wanted to, because we have 2 hours between 2 other services that have chairs set up like this. So in 2 hours' time, the time it takes us to do our whole service, we would have to literally take down the chairs, put up the tables, have our service, take the tables down, put the chairs back up. So it just wouldn't be possible in this space. If we found another space at some point, that you know,
We
that's
could
not.
probably do that in 317 in the afternoon on Sunday. But then we're kind of.
Yeah, in the afternoon on Sunday, we could do it in this space. Actually, the afternoon on Sunday is easier than Saturday night because we wouldn't,
Set up.
We wouldn't have to set the
Yeah.
chairs up that.
we might have to take down the chairs and set up our tables, but then we could just walk out when we're done. So there's lots of possibilities and so forth. Yeah.
I know, for Winston and I, we're really excited about the model that's being proposed, and we want to support it, but for our family unit, we're thinking like, it's just a big commitment as far as how many nights, if we're doing, if we're both doing the Grover thing, which I'm currently not, but I'd like to. I mean, it's 4 different things, right? And I just don't know if we're like there that we can make the commitment to all of those things, especially with
Well-
all the changes happening in our.
I get it. The one thing I would say is, again, Celebration of Grace is monthly, and one of the things that we could talk about, that we've been talking about with leadership is Table of Grace weekly, and then an additional monthly thing with Celebration of Grace, or do we entertain the possibility of Celebration of Grace just being like the first Saturday night, or whatever the time slot is for Table of Grace, that once a month, it's Celebration of Grace instead of Table of Grace.
That's kind of when we were proposing it the last time, that's kind of how I took away from it, is that we have 4 Sundays, sometimes 5, but generally we get 4 Sundays or Saturdays. One would be celebration, 3, the other 2 would be table, the extra would be table. Yeah, so that was the way I understood it, instead of having something in addition to.
So exactly what do you mean with the celebration? What is it?
Celebration of Grace will look a lot like a concert of prayer. So there'd be Whereas at Table of Grace, we typically, unless there's a Bon Jovi song involved, scale back the music. So it's a smaller worship team. There's not as many people having to be involved with the music every single week. It's a little easier on the musicians and so forth. And it creates a little more of an intimate atmosphere than having kind of the big brouhaha up on the stage. So Celebration of Grace, we kind of really be creating more of a worship event with more of the whole band, and there'd be prayer. And if you were a part of the
Praise.
when we did 21 days of prayer with the other churches, and we kicked it off here, and that's kind of what we did. It was kind of Celebration of Grace. With the exception of Celebration of Grace, I think a lot of what I want to be a part of that would be some tests. I would want that to be a place where the missional communities that are making an impact would be able to come and once a month say, hey, here's a cool thing that happened, that God did this. God, so we'd be hearing what God's doing in the midst of the worship and the prayer. So that's what that would look like.
Well, what I was thinking, that Table of Grace, it kind of starts with grow groups are the really small groups, cell groups, and then we go to missional communities, although they don't have to be necessarily the same people. You can, be in a grow group that's with somebody that's not in the missional community too. But then the missional communities then come together with Table of Grace. Now, the thing is, Table of Grace takes up a lot of space, so eventually there might be a time when there could be too many people to fit into one Table of Grace, or there might be a region like Madison or somewhere else that would do their own Table of Grace. Then once a month we would still have all the Table of Grace get
Right.
together on a single
Yeah.
celebration.
So grow groups would multiply, missional communities would multiply, Table of Grace would multiply rather than just saying bigger and bigger and bigger. Celebration of Grace would be the one thing that, unless ended up planting a church in Alaska, and they're doing their, then it would multiply. But that would be the thing that would keep you. My roommate in college planted and grew a fairly large church outside of Toronto, and his was a multi-site church. But once a year, they called it Under One Roof, and everybody from all the sites would come together for this massive worship service. It was crazy. I mean, when I say massive, it's 10,000 people, kind of massive. And so I'm not worried about finding a space for 10,000 people at this juncture. When it comes to missional ministry too, again, if you remember that illustration of addition versus multiplication, addition grows fast in the beginning, but there will be limits. Multiplication goes very slow in the beginning, but then once you start getting further along, you start really seeing the fruit. So missional churches, actually Caesar, his other book is called Small is Big, Slow is Fast. And, just every time we kind of talk about, where we are and how things are going, it's like, dude, small is big, slow is fast. Just don't worry about it. Just do what God's calling you to do. Let Him do the growth. Don't worry about the growth piece. So, yes.
For the missional groups, is there going to be like a leader that does, are they going to be teaching? I know you said each missional group might have their own thing that they might want to do, I don't know, like something that they're passionate about, or correct, or something like that. Is there going to be any teaching involved in it, like scriptural or anything like?
As necessary. When I post this video, he just explains it so much better than I could in 5 minutes tonight amongst the other stuff we're talking about. So when you get that link, watch that. But he talks about how missional community isn't a Bible study, though we do study the Bible. But we study the Bible not just to go, oh, what passage do we want to study tonight? We can read a passage, we'll talk about it a little bit, maybe talk about a life application that we won't follow through on, and we wonder why we never really grow. even though we've been studying the Bible in this Bible study for years and years and years. We grow in terms of knowing more stuff. Our lives aren't necessarily transformed. And that's because discipleship is taking what what does it say in James?
Yes.
Don't just be hearers of the word, be doers. So, mission communities where we be doers of the word. So, with that being said, as you're doing it, you're studying the word and probably learning more from it than a casual intellectual study, because you're going, God, you got to show us how to do this. You know, it's when you're learning, you know, even teaching, when you don't just tell the kids the stuff, then you go and do labs. You know, and so it's the lecture and lab thing kind of rolled into one. So again, it's not primarily a support group, but you support each other. You know, it's not primarily all these other things that small groups can be, but those are involved in it. So is there study? Yeah. But I will say missional community is the people. It's not a meeting. That's the other thing. Small groups in most churches, it's a meeting you attend. And even in churches that take this step and go, well, it's the people, it's not a meeting, but then it tends to be the people who go to that meeting. You know? And so the idea of missional community is these are the people who are on mission together, and because they're on mission together, they get together with some regularity because they know that's needful to be able to accomplish the mission. They need to hear from God. They need to support one another, encourage one another, and so forth. So that's...
Can I ask one more question? To give me an example of something like you and Karen, what do you think your missional group would be gravitating towards? Like, what would you...
Our group has been in process, and we're in the neighborhood, yeah. All the stuff we've been doing is being missional among a people. This is exactly what missionaries do. If you go to Peru, you're going to be living amongst the people, building relationships, and trying to get to a point where at some point you can say, hey, we're going to be studying the Bible together. Would you want to come and be a part of that? And so that's where we're going. Probably this fall we'll start doing a story of God study. Let me wrap up Table of Grace and then get back to missional community and kind of lay out, here's what I'm thinking and how we're moving forward. Okay? Because we're jumping all over. And, so we talked about Table of Grace. You may wonder what's happening while Pastor's on sabbatical. I wanted to let you know what's going with that. Obviously, this Saturday we have our picnic. Next Saturday, the teacher will be Eric Kalenga. He's going to come and teach. The following Saturday will be Dan Carlton. The Saturday after that will be Ira Towns from doing the district, the assistant district superintendent. The Saturday after that, I'll be back from the ride, so it'll be me. And then the Saturday after that, we have a family wedding, and it will be Jeff Light. I don't know if you know Pastor Jeff. So a bunch of other local pastors have agreed to kind of pop in, and they're actually all really excited. It's kind of interesting because I was like, well, you guys can do whatever you want. I'm working through Ephesians, so if you want to do whatever is next up for Ephesians, you can. And they're all like, yeah, so, which I surprised. I thought they'd be like, I'm just going to take one of my old ones out for this, you know. But so they're all preparing a sermon for you from the passage of Ephesians that's been assigned to them. And, you know, at least one guy, Ira, actually emailed me today, he goes, the passage you assigned to me is my favorite passage of Scripture in the Bible. You know, and Jeff said, hey, what happened to the week before me? You're not doing that passage of Ephesians? Because that's a great one. I said, no, I'm doing that one. He's like, I said, that's just how it played out. But it actually did play out incredible, because one of the reasons I picked Ephesians was because of the passage that I'm going to be speaking on and how that impacts where we're going as a church in terms of fivefold ministry. So it was kind of neat how that all worked out, and it was really cool too, because I felt like I'm imposing on them to ask them to fill in, but they're all like, I'm so honored. They all feel like super honored. I guess not a lot of pastors in town give their other pastors in town their pulpit or something. But they're kind of blown away by that. So those guys are going to be filling in as far as the teaching time. Except for the 27th, Winston's gonna kind of be the MC guy, who kind of,
Hold on. We're not gonna
No, all but, he said all but.
all about the 27th.
do it.
Oh, he didn't tell you he canceled the trip to Hawaii so that I could go to a wedding. Except when they're away, Winston will be the MC guy that kind of keeps it going during. I'll have to talk to the elders about communion. I think none of these other pastors necessarily feel particularly ready to lead through communion, so maybe you three maybe want to talk about how you want to, who wants to preside over communion on what week, and just move that around and scripture reading. But your job isn't to do all the other stuff, it's to keep it moving along. Let whoever is doing it know when they do it. And honestly, the way I do that, the easiest is when you put together Proclaim, just put in cue slides for everything. And we just go, okay, we did that, next slide. Oh, that's what we're doing now. But what we do, cleaning up, tearing stuff down and setting up the chairs, everyone tends to pitch in. That gets done. I'm not worried about that. But we will need someone. I was actually thinking Melody, because Melody seems to really get how the chairs are supposed to be. But we do need someone, when I'm gone, to make sure that the chairs, once they're all set up, are pretty close to how they're supposed to be. Well, I'm going to try to have that nailed down before I leave.
I think you should go with that, because she's not here tonight,
So she can't object. Unless if she's not going to be around. Now, the night that Dan Carlton preaches, he can stick around and make sure, because he knows exactly what he wants. In fact, I'll tell him, oh, by the way, you're training people to... Anyway.
We still need somebody to set up, like,
As far as getting communion ready, Marty's been doing that, and I think she's recruited someone to fill in for her when she's gone. But for setup, they set up the tables and chairs for us. So no one has to set up the tables and chairs. But typically, Karen and I come in before the service and put the purple tablecloths and the burlap and the little table carousels. So I would love if someone volunteered to say, I will make sure that happens. That would be fantastic. If no one does, you don't get pretty tables. You'll do it? Thank you. Everyone help her. When she says, I'll do it, she's saying, I will make sure it happens. She's not saying, I will be the one to do all the work on my own. I realize I'm throwing rocks in a glass house on that particular one. But as we move forward, we want to see, more and more of this stuff, just people taking little pieces of it and become a team thing.
Volunteer Melody and Preston to do the chair.
All right. They love when you volunteer them to do things. They've told me that. They've made a point of saying, when our dad volunteers us for stuff, that's awesome. Yes.
What can we do to get more people to come and join us?
You can invite people. We have in the carousel, there's a little business card size invitation. And just every time you come, take 5 of them with you, stick them in your wallet, you go out to eat, leave one on the table. You're at the store and you get a conversation going with a friend, say, oh, this is where I'm going. Just use that as a great little invitation card. That's kind of what I've been doing.
I stapled one to one of those $2 bills that has God on the middle of it. And the store thought, wow, I got a $2 bill. I said, you gotta read it. But it's got God we trust, and it's God's picture, and it's got a few little verses on it.
Those are cool. I don't think we'll do that for invitations to our church, though. Kind of hand people money and then they find out it's not really money. They might get mad at us. But anyway, the other thing is, when I get back, I don't plan on trying to draw people in with a ton of advertising, but because we've switched when we are, I feel like at least a brief campaign on social media, maybe in the newspaper, of some kind of ads that basically kind of give people an idea that, oh, we're on Saturday night now, and we look very different. So if you're not going to like that, don't come. but if you are, check it out. So I will get on that when I come back, and I'm really looking at, just knowing how the summer is low and everything, the fall is in some ways kind of the hard start for the new format. It's been a lot of experimentation thus far, and we got a low summer. The timing of when we did this, which was not the best as far as the rhythms of people and church going and all that. So I have developed a table host job description, and I think I was talking to maybe Karen and Sharon. I was going to get that to you and see if you guys wanted to talk to the other gifted hospitality people and see. And I'll give you the list of who has already said they'd like to be a table host. So I got that together. Moving forward, we'd like to get that and then get better equipped, discussion facilitators. So, because I know one table may struggle on the discussion more than another. So people who kind of pretty good at keeping it on track and drawing out the quiet people and hushing up the verbal people and just trying to get everyone involved. So that's going to be happening when I get back to. That's all I have to say about Table of Grace. Any other questions about Table of Grace?
I don't know if you ever mentioned or not the change that we're going with the King's Kids through the summer for the Table of Grace, where we're just more so having childcare and not having.
Yeah, well, we're doing what we pretty much always did during the summer. I don't think, I'm trying to think, last summer we didn't have classes for all the kids through the whole summer, I don't think. Do you remember? Anyone remember? So if we did, they did not make a big impact. I don't remember, but yeah, at this point, it's so low, so we are offering the child care during the discussion part.
At one
Yeah.
point, weren't we sort of doing it in partnership with Culpeper Baptist when we had the adult electives going?
We were trying to get Winmer in that time slot. It didn't fly.
I think you guys are the only ones.
Yeah.
All the girl people that came, they
Right.
didn't come.
Right. But again, that's what we're doing through the summer. That gives us time to figure out what should this look like come the fall. I will say a big part of children's ministry in the context of where we're going and what we're doing is, again, finding ways for kids to be involved in things like missional community. Anyone here speak English? What percentage of the English you speak is what you learned in school sitting under a teacher, and what percentage of the English you speak is what you learned simply being around your parents and family and everybody in your life and hearing them speak? Christianity is a lot more like learning English. And if we try to contain it to just what they learn in this class, but they're not seeing us live it out here, and that doesn't even mean that the adults aren't living it out. Just the kids don't get to see it because we put them in another room with VeggieTales, And so we want to look at how do we do more where, and I know younger, when they're 2, it's just put them in a room with VeggieTales. There's limits, but like when we were doing our missional community in Vermont, the kids came and we'd be during our session, we'd be over here. And they'd be drawing and building with Legos over on the dining room table, but they still participated. Because what happened is all of a sudden I'd ask a question, and some 8-year-old would chime in with the answer. And it would be an amazing answer. I'd be like, that dude's going to be a pastor, It was pretty cool. And so when we went and, did stuff at the pregnancy center where we were kind of serving, the kids were right there reading with us, and so that's really a lot of the stuff we want to cultivate and see happening. Not to say we're not going to have any kind of more formal education type opportunities, but I think the church needs to really move past that it's for the grown-ups and the kids. You just stay over in this other room until you're old enough. Because Jesus said, let the little ones come to me and don't forbid them.
And even when we did like the prayers of blessing on people, remember when we started doing that?
Right.
We would, every every time we met, we would bring one person to a chair in the middle of the room, and we would just pray over that particular person that week. I think kids would help take part in that, you know, and be able to.
Yeah. I mean, we want the kids to go, oh, this is what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are doing that either way. It's just that for the last several decades, what kids are learning what it means to be a Christian is to attend on Sunday and, you know, not much beyond that. And so,
Never dropping out at church for it.
Right.
yeah. And the number one reason when they've done studies on why the younger generation is leaving church, it hasn't been because it's boring, which everyone assumes. We need to make it more hip. Then the young people stay. The number one... Not always. Anyway, the number one reason was that they felt there was no place for them to be involved. They didn't know where they belonged. And so, I mean, it's huge. Even, you know, I think it's fantastic, like that Preston and Melody have been involved in the band. You know, so he may go to college, he may end up living in Ohio, but when he goes to that church, he's going to be like, I think I'm probably going to be involved in worship, because that's, you know, when someone has found their niche in the body of Christ, wherever they go, they're going to stay plugged into their niche. But if they've never found that, they go to some place where they don't have those relationships, and it's like, eh. So that's important stuff. Celebration of Grace, we kind of talked about already. And I think the input I heard was, I mean, the one thought we had with the Sunday morning thing too was that a lot of people were hurting for not having Sunday morning, so it was something on Sunday morning for them. At this point, I don't know that there are that many of them left, but so kind of it's like, do we do it as an additional thing on Sunday morning once a month, or do we streamline and have it as one of those, as we talked about? Again, value your input. I'm going to be on a motorcycle, I'm not going to want to hear it. So talk to John Green and talk to Raymond and say, here's what I think, and just let them have it. Just give them all your input. When I come back, they should just be repositories of congregational wisdom. Like, we have heard from everybody, you are never going on a trip like that again. So anyway, any other questions on Celebration of Grace?
I would say I like just real quick, I like the idea of keeping it on Saturday so that we're always the same.
Yes.
That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. It's a little less confusing.
Yeah.
And honestly, if we're doing that, you know, Lila's talking about all the stuff, but really then we have a once a week service, once a week small groups, and grow groups, which is pretty much what we've been trying to have for the last 2 years anyway. I mean, we've always had a once a week service. We've always had life groups. And, you know, grow groups is a whole other thing, but grow groups are different, really, because it's getting together with some of your friends once a week, and it can be anytime, anywhere. So it's not a meeting to attend. It's different. Missional communities. What are we doing? We've talked a little bit what they're going to look like and so forth, and I'm going to put some resources available, so if you want to learn more, you can. Here's what I say. Some people say, how are we going to do these? When are they going to start? I know the thinking behind those questions is that your typical church, what they would do is they would put together let's grab a bunch of leaders and we'll kind of train them real quick, and then we'll plan to start all these groups on this date. And that would work moderately well. But because missional communities are a very different thing and are different than what a lot of the small group experiences that most churches are like, what we're going to do when I get back is we're going to start a greenhouse. Not yours, but you know with a greenhouse what you do is you get a bunch of seeds and you put them in the little container, and inside your protected environment you grow some seedlings that ultimately you're going to take and plant in other places. And so what the greenhouse will be is a place, it'll be one group where we're going to talk about what it means to be a missional community. We're going to start going through doing missional stuff and modeling it and cultivating so that when people who are part of the greenhouse feel prepared, they will be ready to then go as a little seedling and start a missional community. Now, John Green might say, end of September, he's like, we're ready to go, we're going to start ours. I'm not saying you're going to have to, I'm not volunteering you, let them, but maybe Raymond Bender goes, I'm not so sure about this yet, maybe in January. Or maybe Winston, it's like a year and a half from now. But it's more of a place where here is a place where we can start preparing people, modeling it. By the way, this is kind of how Jesus did the thing, right? He brought in his disciples, they went everywhere with him. Now he sent them all out at once because he left. But before he did, he sent them out for brief spells. They came back in, they debriefed, So it'll be lots of opportunity, kind of, the greenhouse is missional community with training wheels. Until people, and then what that will do is, then we begin to multiply out there. We're doing multiplication, not addition. Are we going to add a group this year? It's going to be, we have a group, and this group, because they've been in the greenhouse, they understand that part of what that group is not just a guy leading this group of people forever, but a leader leading this group that contains other future leaders. Now you may be saying, but when I multiply, does that mean I have to go to a greenhouse and my missional community? No, I think as we move forward, initially greenhouse would be kind of a weekly thing, but I think like once we started to multiply out, people who have multiplied out would maybe bring them together once a quarter, kind of, and say, how's things going, and there would always be that ongoing coaching relationship. So I don't know if I explained that well at all. Did I explain that well? Did I explain that well? Yeah. No. I never explained it well for you.
No, I was only now at the beginning, and then I came back to a greenhouse.
So I'm boring you, okay.
One group, starting with one group.
We're starting with one group that's going to model it, and then as leaders feel prepared, we will multiply out other groups.
Okay, now I got it.
Right. It's as if we had one family that then had kids, and then they would move out and start their own families, which is exactly what we want to do.
Where's this greenhouse gonna be?
Where's the greenhouse going to be? Well, we'll probably start at our house, and any of you guys that are interested in learning and potentially either leading a group or being really integral to a group, I would invite you to be a part of that. If you're going, I just want to, once groups are happening, I want to go and kind of be in one that way for a while, that's fine. I don't think we can fit the entire church into a greenhouse group, although, after the last few months, it is possible. Hey, it's not funny, but I gotta laugh. It keeps me sane. So yeah, and there may be some of you who don't come to me and I try to pressure you into being a part of it because I see potential in you. And so it not only has to do with capacity, leadership of the group potential, but who's leading into the whole missional thing. I'm really excited about this. I want to see this happen. I want to have an impact on my neighborhood or on this people group or this people group in our community.
You're gonna be selling flowers?
Are we, what?
You're gonna be selling the flowers in your greenhouse?
No.
Kathy, that's bad.
I thought you were saying we're going to be like a cult, like you're going to shave our heads and run around with roses and little togas. Anyway, that's going to be our new method of fundraising. So I think the two important things that we'll be looking at as we cultivate leaders, which also we want to multiply, is both capacity and character. I think the problem in a lot of, I won't just say churches and ministry, but all the way up to, we keep seeing, how many times in the news have we seen big, successful church leaders fall? It's because it was capacity, but the character part was neglected early on. And once you start moving up the leadership chain, who's gonna speak into that? you know, so that has to be built in from the very beginning. And actually, and you guys don't have to worry about this, but at least Raymond and I, and we'll see who else, but we're looking at something that we may present in retreat form a couple of times a year that really speaks into how do we live missionally and deal with our own character and our own stuff. I've looked at it, it looks good, but I want to test drive it with a couple of people before I inflict it upon anyone. So I'll inflict it upon my elders because they're my elders and that's their job, inflict it. So that is the plan for Mission Community. I leave on Sunday. You have like 3 weeks at least to prayerfully consider whether that's something you want to be a part of the greenhouse. And yeah, and before you ask me all kinds of super detailed questions about what's happening in greenhouse, I don't have a book for greenhouse either. But basically what I'm going to kind of be doing with y'all is what, to some degree, to a greater degree, I think, but what Caesar has been doing with us and the other people in the group, and we're a part of a cohort. Now we're all live in different places, so we don't actually have a real physical group, but there's just a lot of coaching and a lot of, living into it. So, there's these other people all over the country that are going to ask us, on the next Monday phone call, hey, how did your last Front Yard Friday go? Or how did it go with that guy who you said your next step with was to go have lunch? Did that happen? And if not, why not? And if so, how do you see God working? It's been really cool. It really has. So, anyway. Last thing, grow groups. And I really believe grow groups are going to form through that multiplication process as well. So, I've had a couple of different grow groups over the last year with different people. For various reasons, they've petered out. And I've learned some things through that. But I think really what's going to happen is, again, people who are interested in leading to this, saying, let's kind of do a greenhouse grow group. But grow groups should always be like, it's not us three until Jesus comes. It's us three, and then it's, or us two or three, and at some point maybe we invite a fourth in, and then when we're ready, we're 2 and 2. And then we each invite a third in, and then, so it's going to be, again, through multiplication that grow groups, I believe, will, I would love to be able to say, we're going to have grow group Sunday, and we're just going to have tables all over, and all the grow group leaders will be there, and you go sign up for a grow group. It doesn't work. It doesn't even work in mega churches that do it. The reason it looks like it works there is because they have 3,000 people. So yeah, they get 400 to sign up, but it's actually not a good percentage, So, what you're hearing is we're doing it through multiplication. It's by investing in you that you in turn will invest in others. Now, I did come across a fantastic resource. It's been hiding on my phone, actually, for months. And I forgot I put it on there. And then Karen did one of those YouVersion Bible, the Bible reading plans. And it was like a 4-day plan by Francis Chan called Multiply. And I looked at it, oh wait, I have a Multiply app. What is that? I got it, go ahead and open it. I opened it, and Francis Chan wrote a book called Multiply. That's really like a workbook. Cindy's looked at it, probably closer than I have. And it's something that you're really intended to work through with 1 or 2 other people and to disciple one another with an eye towards becoming disciples who make disciples. So in the app is the book plus a weekly video by Francis Chan and who's the other guy? Give me a famous big pastor from Texas. Not Biglio.
Texas, Warren.
No. What's his name?
That doesn't matter.
Anyway. Yeah, I think it's David Platt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
The name of the book is,
The name of the book is Multiply. You can actually go, there's a link for multiplymovement.com. And the site is free. The app gives you the book. You can go out and buy the book, but on the app, you actually have the book for free. On the website, you can download PDFs of the chapters for free. The videos are there for free. It's almost like instead of just wanting to make money, they actually wanted to help people make disciples. That's pretty cool. And also on the app, there's a daily Bible reading plan that sort of aligns with what you're learning. I know it's like a chapter in Matthew every day for the first week or something like that. So a really good resource. When I come back, I'm going to try to nag people into it, but if anybody wants to say, grab one or two other people and say, would you want to start doing this multiply thing with me? I would encourage you to do it. In fact, if I came back and there's like 2 or 3 little road groups doing multiply, I would be so thrilled. The app is called Mobile Multiply App. You can find it in the App Store.
Multiply, it's one of the first ones that comes up after all the math flashcards.
Yeah, it's got like this little orange circle with things sticking out of it.
If you put it multiply, it should come out. It should come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go through it with a group with only the book. It's kind of neat that there's these other resources available. But I think it's a fabulous, free resource that can help kind of some folks walk through, together with a couple other people. What does it really mean to be a disciple and follow Jesus and live it out? And, let me put it this way. As you hear me talk about being disciples, make disciples, that we're all called to be disciple makers. Does anyone find that frightening? Now, raise your hand if you already have raise your hand if you don't have any plan on how to make disciples. All right, so most of us don't. Most Christians are like, yes, make disciples. No idea. What do I do? What does it look like? This is a great resource to kind of help people go, oh, we all can be disciple makers. It's not just for the guys we hire at the church to make disciples in residence. It's something we're all called to do. And so, free, easy stuff we can do together. We can be discipling one another, and that can multiply. So, what does that look like in 10 years? I don't know, but multiplying is exciting to me. So, that's all I have. Questions and attempts at answers about any of that. I know we already did a lot of questions along the way. Thoughts, concerns, insults?
Have we thought about, because this is such a different model, have we thought about bringing, I don't want to say bringing the other churches in Culpeper on board, but letting them know kind of what we're doing, so in case there might be some people in their churches that are like, hey, we're still going to do our normal Sunday stuff, but we want to do this missional community. I mean, I'm assuming if some people from our church are bumping on to other churches, and I'm not saying we poach them and steal them and say you can't go to that church, but bringing some other people in to kind of complement what we have. Because if the goal overall, I remember you saying when I first came here, your goal was eventually to have so many groups throughout the community of Culpeper. You didn't give a crap about what church they attended as long as they were. So that's what I was thinking, is how much of a community focus, so like getting some people from Mountain View on board, get people from Huron Board or all the other churches. So if anybody wants to come and be a part of these things, they know what's going on. Has that been something?
I have thought about that. And even a lot of the stuff, there's no reason that they couldn't, and I would never turn anyone away. And if someone said, can we be a part of the missional community and not go to Table of Grace because we go to Mountain View and want to still go there, I would say fine.
and we're praying and hoping that it'll catch fire like that.
Right, and yeah, if we could infect the other churches, I'm fine with that. The other a lot of the other pastors, well, I shouldn't even say a lot because there's so many in this town, but the pastors I know, who I brush shoulders with often, they know what we're doing, they know what our church has been going through, they have been praying for us, they are rooting us on. The times where I've been discouraged and like, oh man, I am I just totally on the wrong track, can I just kill this church? It's been other pastors in this community that have said, no, we need you. We need what you're doing, we need what your church is becoming. It doesn't look like ours, but that's fine, we need what you're doing. And so they're super supportive of it. I haven't talked to any of them about the idea of, sending a couple of people our way for a period of time. I know when City on the Hill was planted that there was some of that. I mean, I wasn't here, but I think there was some where some folks from Mountain View came over to help it get going, and I don't know if some stayed, some didn't, I don't know. But they're all, I know that the Jenkins have become close friends of ours, really supportive. Dan Carlton, really supportive. And I asked all the guys that are coming to speak, I just said, you know what? I'm leaving on sabbaticals because I've had a rough time, but I know you all have had a rough time with this too. And so I've asked them, hey, if you have any word of encouragement for these people who have been troopers through a challenging time, I'd love for you to share that with them. I didn't tell them what to say or anything like that. Just say, if you got a word of encouragement, from your perspective about what's going on in this church, please share that. And they probably would have done that anyway. I feel like it's good for you guys to hear from other pastors say, hey, this is actually cool. And I will tell you, it looks like things are really rough right now, but some of those pastors are jealous of us. Now, you might say, why? Because they got so many more people. Because they're running around just trying to keep the machine running. And some of them, I heard one other pastor say, man, I wish I could just do some deeper stuff. I just want to disciple someone. I'm just tired of keeping the machine running. So some of them are jealous. They're going, man, things are set up there where you can really do what I long to do. That said, if any of them try to take my job out of me, don't let, if you really think they do a better job, that'd be fine. That's okay. They are supportive. Haven't had those conversations. Maybe when I get back, I'll have some of those conversations. You just say, here's what we're doing if we got anyone. Because I know Raymond has talked to some folks from other churches that were interested. Mike Webb is not going to be probably coming because I'm pretty sure that Providence just hired him as an assistant pastor. I'm pretty annoyed about it. But anyway.
I can't remember if it was Francis Chan or was it Caesar Kalinowski, but that one of those was the pastor of like a mega church.
Yeah, Francis Chan.
They both were.
Yeah, they were both on, Caesar was on staff at a mega church. Francis planted and grew a church to mega church size, and then stepped down and went for a year as a missionary to China, and then came back and said, we're doing a church like that, because what I did before, that's kind of what the whole book, Letters to the Church, is about, just kind of, and he wasn't saying, mega church is evil, he wasn't saying any of that, but he's saying, there needs to be something else going on, because that, in some way, is missing it.
Their family, another one, I remember the family went overseas to be missionary, and then they were like, this is wonderful, this is what the Lord's called us.
Yeah, Caesar said the same thing. Yeah, he was like, on the field, he's like, oh, this is what Christian community is actually like. Why isn't it like this at home?
And then the Lord called them back to the United States, and now that's what they're doing here, like the same thing they did, and not a mega church, but now they're reaching people, like missionaries in other countries. Yeah. And so, and then also, they have shared this, but the thing, we had that one pastor at the home come by and share about pruning. How Jesus said, if there's any tree, any of the vines that bear fruit, the ones that don't bear fruit, he cuts them off. But the ones there's lots of vines, but the question is, are they bearing fruit? And so bearing fruit is when other people, the lost are ministered to, were being the hands and the feet of Jesus to others, And so the pastor at home was saying, well, if they bear fruit, they still get cut back. Jesus said, if I find the vine that's bearing fruit, what do I do? He said, I cut it back. You know, I prune it. And so, I don't know, I just felt like I was sitting on the whole church so much that it was like that, you know, because I know in the GW that it did bear fruit. You know, there were a number of people raising their hands, you know, and it was more of a convert type, maybe, and not the discipleship, but it was, you know, it was bearing fruit. But I feel like, you know, the Lord is pruning, brought us through a time of pruning, you know. And so, you know, you just can't go by the way it looks, by the numbers, you know. It's like it's definitely what's doing that.
I'm supposed to close your eyes before you speak.
Close your eyes, look here, raise your hands.
Well, he was an elder, so he had to.
There's always that one.
I don't close my eyes when I do an altar call. Because how can you follow up on it if you don't follow up on it? When I was in Youth for Christ, they said it's a sin to abandon a newborn baby on the birthing table. And that's what a lot of evangelism does. You lead people to Christ, and you wouldn't do that physically to a baby. Why do we do that spiritually to a baby? You don't, walk alongside of them and that kind of thing. So, and I think the most successful evangelistic ministries understand that. That's why Billy Graham, when you come to town, unless you've got counselors ready to go and churches ready to go, and even with that, there's kind of a high attrition rate. Because you can't lead a horse to water. So, any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Encouragements?
We said,
Yes, I'll try.
How many weeks?
3. I have a plane ticket to come back from Portland, Oregon. My flight leaves at 11 o'clock on July the 10th, whether I'm there or not. So I have to be there. So the plan is to kind of keep checking, and when we're falling behind schedule, we're just going to hop on highways and make up time. Because I mean, you could run. My friend left last Saturday. He lives in Hood River, Oregon. He's riding here first to meet up with me so we can, he's riding across country so we can ride across country. We're going westward, yeah. So, but he's going to get across in a week, which is doable, but on the trail, it's much slower because you can't go 70 on the Jeep road full of gravel on a motorcycle. Well, you can't do that twice. So, I do appreciate the prayers. I would love to, if you guys have, again, I said this Saturday, but if you have prayer, I'd love to be praying for you spiritually. We kind of talked about in Ephesians how Paul prayed. So I don't necessarily want 5 requests from you for your aunt and all these people. I mean, I don't mind that, but I'm not going to remember your aunt's broken ankle while I'm on my motorcycle, but I will remember, I will be praying for you either way on the motorcycle. I will bring each of your faces forth in my imagination at some point. And so if you have a particular thing you've been struggling with spiritually, or a particular desire that you have spiritually, I want to grow more in this aspect, let me know in writing somehow. Shoot me a text or email or something. If you just tell me now and then leave, I may or may not remember. But if I can pray in a more informed way, and I just ask you guys, don't just pray that I make it safely, but please be praying for just that God would be preparing me for what's next. Preparing my soul, my relationship with Him, preparing me to prepare you, all of that. So this is not just a fun trip because I need a break. It is a sabbatical. I do plan. The guy I'm going with, I'm actually traveling by grace because his name is Steve Grace. And he'll be right beside me all the way. But he is an Alliance pastor in Hood River, Oregon. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. We met on a bicycle trip from Long Island to Portland, Maine and back when we were 14. So it's been 38 years that we've been friends. And in some ways more like brothers, because there's times we didn't get along and didn't talk for a year, but we always seem to come back, and it always seems to come back to where it's at. So, you know, and he's on sabbatical as a pastor as well. And so we're kind of going to be speaking into each other's lives and kind of being spiritual director to one another and all that. We're both going to have so many more sermon illustrations after this. You're going to get sick of it. One time when I was riding across America, you'd be like, kid, no more. I don't know what will come of that, but I gave too many science fiction sermon illustrations in my last church, and I got an anonymous package on the front pew. And when I opened it, it was the New Testament in Klingon. And I'm like, I feel like the biggest nerd in the world, because I have the New Testament in Klingon. I said, no, the biggest nerd in the world is the dude who was in his mother's basement for years writing the New Testament in Klingon. That man has an issue. But anyway, so, you know, not to talk about the trip too much, but some of you are probably curious, what on earth is going on with you? And, so, yeah. Also, I did, because I don't want, like, everyone on Facebook that's a friend of mine to get inundated constantly with pictures and stuff from this trip, so I created a group. So if you go on my Facebook, if you want updates and you want to know what's going on, you can go to my Facebook page and look and find you click on a link and you can join, what did I call it? Two amigos on the Trans-American Trail or something like that. So if you want to kind of get the updates, and Aaron, Jim, lent me his GoPro camera, so I've been figuring out, I watched the video on where to mount it on the helmet, where to mount it on the bike, so I'll create these cool videos.
I have a bunch of sticky pads for you.
Yeah, well I figured I can't stick it in the front because it's a modular helmet, so it swings up, so we knock the camera off.
I put mine on my modular helmet.
Oh, yeah, you put it on the peak? See, I got a ridge there.
Are you gonna wear a pillow in your britches?
Huh?
Pillow in your britches.
Pillow in your britches?
I have an extra pad on the seat.
When he gets back, we'll both be waddled.
We'll look more alike than we do now. But, yeah, I got an extra pad for the seat. I ordered some, what's that stuff called? Boudreaux's butt paste for the chafing.
Sorry, honey, it's time to
Hey, they're asking me questions now.
You need to put something on your hiney.
Yes. I've made all possible preparations for my hiney that I could.
And we're recording this too.
Just when I thought, what could possibly be more embarrassing than me singing that song and that getting recorded? Well, okay, here we go.
We're gonna have stuff to pick on.
Anyway, any other church-related questions? Or spiritual questions? Just any question not involving my butt.
What time is this Saturday, the picnic?
Picnic is 4:30. So it's basically the same time as always. We just said 4:30, so all the vendors would be there because it's at the house.
And now it's such a moment.
So, and I think we do, I know it's potluck, but if we're doing burgers and stuff, I know Chris Duncan told me he's bringing like 200 rolls from Chick-fil-A and Arby's. I told him, yeah, that's too many. So I don't know how many he's going to show up with, but don't buy rolls. Nobody buy rolls. We got rolls. Because he's doing this bread delivery job, and I guess there's always extras that it's like, if they don't find someone to take them, they chop them. So, and these particular ones are for the various Arby's and Chick-fil-A and so
My
forth.
name is Jimmy, we'll take anything you give me.
Okay, so if the rolls that don't get taken, you take them home.
We will freeze them for the next outing.
Anything else?
For your butt when you get back.
All right, I think we've got back to my butt, so we're going to go immediately to prayer. Who opened us in prayer? John opened us in prayer. What I'd like to do is just, let's have a time where anyone who wants to pray can, and when it seems like everyone's had a chance, you can kind of hang up the phone. Okay? Heavenly Father, I do thank you for what you're doing among us, what you're doing in us. I thank you for each of these individuals who cared enough to be here tonight. And Lord, we want you to lead this thing. We want you to lead this thing, Lord. We want you to lead each of us individually. You know what you want to do. Make us pliable and adjustable to where you ask us to adjust to what you're doing. Lord, for all we know, you're going to start moving in ways that we never saw coming. And we want to be not so rigid in our plans that we miss your plans. But Lord, please give us wisdom. Anything you'll tell us ahead of time, we'll take. Lord, give us courage, give us encouragement, give us your Holy Spirit. Lord, I pray for this church as well while I'm away. I'm not worried about it at all because I believe in the leaders who are going to be here, and I trust the men who are going to be bringing teaching while I'm gone. And I just pray that it would be an amazing time for them while I'm gone. It'd be nice if they still want me back when I get back, Lord, but I do pray that I would not be missed in that respect. So, Lord, I just, we give this all to you and trust in what you're going to do.
Lord, we thank you for PT and for his willingness to follow you, no matter where you lead him, no matter where you lead us. Thank you, Father, for giving him the courage to stand up and say, this doesn't look like anything we've ever done before, but this is where I feel God is taking us. Help us, Father, to be courageous and strong. Help us to rely on you. Help us to seek your wisdom. Help us to keep our brothers and sisters in prayer. Help us to remember PT and his other amigo in prayer as they make their way across the country. Help us, Father, just to be open to what you have for us. Help us to put any agenda that we might have in a pocket and put it away. Help us just to focus on you and what you want for this church. And help us to step out of our comfort zone. Some of it might seem a little scary to people, myself included. But you don't want us in our comfort zone. You want us to disciple, to be out there, and to be witnesses. So help us to do that in the best way that we can. We thank you for your Son, and that you love us so much that you gave him to us, that we might live an everlasting life with you. And we pray in Jesus' name.
God, I thank you so much for being such a loving Heavenly Father. And I thank you, Lord, that you chose not to just dwell inside of a building that is majestic for you to reside in, but God, you chose to reside in us, Lord Jesus. And I thank you, Lord, that you have chosen to make us your dwelling place. Father, I just pray, God, that you would just help us to represent you in all that we do and all that we say. Let the things that burden your heart, that's on your heart, to be the same burden that's in ours, Lord God. Lord, help us, Lord, to be effective for you, Lord Jesus. And Lord, I just pray for Pastor Tom as he's on this sabbatical. Lord, I just pray, oh God, that he would have intimate times, Father, with you, that he would clearly hear you speak to him, Lord.
I pray, God, for your refreshing, joy and refreshing of your spirit to come upon him and to be with him, Lord. And I just pray that you will clearly give him the wisdom and the direction and clearly show him, Father, where you're at work and how you want us to join you. Lord, I just pray that us here in this body, Father, would diligently search and hunger to hear you and to see you where you're at work, and that we would have such a strong desire to join you in what you're doing. Help us, Lord God, to lay down all of ourselves and to surrender our lives totally to you, and to be willing to be used by you, Father, as you have created us to be your workmanship, Father. So, Lord, help us, Lord, to be the tools and machines that help to bring people to the knowledge of you and to feel that love that you have for each one of us, Lord. No matter where we're at, whether we're living in sin or whatever, because you still love us. You don't love the sin, but you still love us. And Lord, I just pray, oh God, that our lives would portray that love to every person that we come in contact with, wherever their walk of life is. That we can be loving and accepting and not judging or being critical. Father, I just thank you.
Father, I pray that the church at Culpeper would be enriched by what's taking place here, Lord. We thank you for the pastors that will be coming here, and we just pray that you prepare the way for them. Just enrich Tom and his friend as they go across country, help them to encourage each other, Father. Just pray for safe travel, and just be near to them, Lord. It's our desire for you to be near to us, Lord. We just don't want to hinder anything that you want to do in our lives and in the life of your church here at City on Hill. We thank you, Father, for the privilege of what you are doing, this new thing, and Lord, we thank you to be able to hear that other pastors and other shepherds are encouraged by what's taking place, and Lord, we just are just excited about just your presence, Father, and we just sense your presence tonight, and we just pray that you would just continue to lead and direct us as we step out in faith and trust you. You're so trustworthy and true. We thank you for that, Lord.
Thank you for this time this evening. For the word that I left you speaking to us was the word where you said, I must, John Baptist made it said, I must decrease so that he might increase. Lord, I just pray that you would show us, Lord, the meaning of that. And Lord, I just pray that we could be more like Jesus. Help us, Lord, to have more of you. And maybe less of programs, maybe less of activities, Lord, maybe more of you. Help us to be in Culpeper, the hands and the feet of Jesus. Lord, to those around us, Lord, to our neighbors, everyone we need, Lord, that we could be Jesus to them. And now I just ask, Lord, that you would bless each person here. Bless Pastor Brown, Lord. I pray that you would lay the blood of Christ, Lord, over his life as he goes on this trip, on this sabbatical. Your blood over his body, his soul,
forgot one of the pastors who speak. Ben Clark is also speaking. He's the site pastor at Life Point. Not the main pastor, he doesn't even know. But the site pastor.
Well, it was nasty weather, so we ended up, I texted everybody and said, we're still gonna do it, we'll do it inside. What was still not, we still had.
All right, make me bring it all the way back.
His wife, Heidi and Julio, and then his, they lived down here.
Lila, what's it feel like?
We spent quite a bit of time going through.
Make it to the end of one.
I'm thinking about that.
Well, they are.
Usually it's like we went from